And
Seriously.
something I didn't quite understand either is, and this actually kind of goes into part 2 also, and I guess now we're kind of deviating from 5 to the series, but I mean, if one Terminator didn't succeed, sorry, I keep kind of going back and forth. In the 5th movie, I get the impression that there's only one time displacement machine, and that's the one that the original Terminator went back through. And so now the humans have it briefly, but then they all get killed by Skynet. So then I'm wondering, how is it that the T-1000 is able to go back in time if the humans were successful? It just kind of...
It gets convoluted. Like I said, like we said, Terminator Genisys gets really convoluted
if
because...
you really think about it.
Yeah, if you really think about it, it really is a puzzle. Because even Kyle Reese, at the end of the film, before it finishes, he says, there's a lot of questions I need answering.
Oh, and he's alive. Oh, yeah.
And
they all survive.
They all survive. And it is true. What he said was so true. He says, as they drive off into, not the sunset, but they drive off into whatever, Kyle Reese, you see his voice, you hear his voice. He goes, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. But right now, this road can lead into many different paths, like this life or this.
Yeah, something about that. Many roads lead to one goal.
Exactly. Like where it's like now we change the time stream so much that we can do whatever we want.
But that, that's actually. Thank you for reminding me about that, because that's one of the main things when I first heard about this movie, when I saw the previews, I was like, no. The whole part 2 was actually preventing Judgment Day, and that, thanks to part 3, that didn't work. Now, they're writing this new story, and all of a sudden they think they can prevent Judgment Day. Granted, I mean, if you think about it, you're going to say, well, these guys, these characters are in the 80s, none of the events of part 2 happened, but as far as the audience is concerned, like, we've already seen the movie where they tried to stop it, and apparently it didn't work, but now we're expected to believe that it really can work, even though in part 3 they were saying that fate can't be changed.
Yeah.
Yet in part 2 they're saying it can be.
Yeah.
And now they're saying fate can be changed, I think.
Yeah, because before Kyle Reese goes into his monologue at the end, he goes, not everything's set in stone. Now that we prevented whatever we had to do or whatever, now the future is untold and we could go to anywhere we want with our lives or something like that. And I was just like, okay. And then after the credits we see something different. So, but surprisingly, when I read about Jim Cameron's opinion about the film Terminator Genisys, he actually liked it, and I was shocked because I was like, are you serious?
Was he joking?
No, he wasn't joking. I
apologize.
They interviewed him, and he was like, "Yeah, I liked it a lot. It was kind of like a shocker, kind of surprised to see John Connor to be the hope for the machines." And
now he's and I thought, and for a brief moment in time, I'm like, hey, this is a real twister. He was once humanity's hope, now he's the machine's hope. For a second, it sounds cool, but then when you really think about it, it's like, oh wait, that just defeats these past 30 years of movies that we've been going to see, and I would have just liked for them to kind of delve into the future. They started doing that with part 4. I would like to see maybe kind of like a closure to everything. Like, we've gone in 1984, then we traveled to, I think it was John seemed to be 13 years old when the Terminator 2 came out, so I'm not really sure how old he was. I think they explained it in part 3. But anyway, then we see him as older, as a young man, and then part 4 rolls around, and he's still a young man, but now we're into the post-nuclear war. So now it would have been nice to see, okay, let's go further into the future, now where they have laser weapons, because I mean, like I said, when James Cameron did the first 2, I was like, man, I want to see more of the future. And like I said, we got a little bit of that in this movie, but I would just like to see the whole movie kind of just focus there and just see it kind of run through its course.
Yeah.
I thought that would have been great.
Me personally, I would have loved to see a story about other people that were part of the war and that played important roles in the war. Because I'm not saying that John Connor and Sarah Connor, you really can't do more with them. You can do a lot more, but I'm pretty sure there was other people who played an important role in the war. Like, for example, John Connor had his lieutenants. There's other people normal people who they're trying to survive the apocalyptic that came to the world, and they're probably in Australia or they're in China or something like that, and they're just trying to bring civilization back to where they're at. But then you have Skynet out of nowhere. They appear from the sky, and they're like, oh wow, people have come to save us, and then next thing you know, no, they're Terminators. They come to kill you, and they're just trying to survive through the entire film. I would love to see something like that. That to me would be like, imagine you have like, and it takes place in the future of Tokyo, and Tokyo's all messed up, and you have 4 different parts around the world getting together with American, Japanese, and they're like trying to communicate with one another, and they're trying to survive these machines that appeared out of nowhere, and they're like trying to go through the alleys and mazes of destroyed Japan or destroyed Tokyo. I mean, that would have been pretty cool for me. I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting. That's survival. That's gritty. That's it's true, because this entire in the Terminator film, the entire world gets affected. They all get nuked. So I'm pretty sure there's not many places where there's still buildings standing. There's a lot of nuclear waste. There's a lot of people dying right and left. There's a lot of people who are killing other people to survive because they become cannibals. And I would love to see something like that, and not in the sense that I want to see the gore and the cussing and the whole 80s messed up action-packed films. No, I would like to see more like a survival film, and somehow the human race find different ways of fighting the Terminators. And first the Terminators just sent like 2 Terminators to different parts around the world, and then they send 5, and then they start sending like different waves. And next thing you know, it's kind of like it gets really, really kind of the human race gets put into a corner and different parts around the world, and they're trying to communicate with one another, and they're being heard in different places. You just hear on one of the radios from Russia, they just hear like, and you're like, oh snap, something went down. So stuff like that, where it kind of brings the audience like, oh man, like kind of like that reality of the Terminator, like, oh, this is really happening, and people are surviving, they're fighting back, and stuff like that. And I think I would love to see something like that, in the future.
Yeah, exactly, where you actually get to see. Well, I mean, I really like the laser weapons. Those are super cool. But yeah, I think that would have been cool, just to kind of like let's progressing into the story. And as a fan, like, I feel kind of 2 ways about it as far as the series goes. Part of me thinks like it should end, because I mean, you can't keep retelling the same story over and over. Like, oh, we got to go back in time to prevent this. Okay, we're successful. Oh, we got to go back in time to do this, or we got to, it's kind of like the same thing over and over and over. It's like you can only do that, so much before it just gets tiring. And so in that sense, the series would have to end unless you kind of find other loopholes to not contradict what was already done in a previous movie. It's like, yeah, you did that, but here's another variable that you didn't account for, and they're like, oh man, now what do we do? So that would have been. I already lost my train of thought.
Well, for me, and I agree with you. One of my, as you guys already know, that one of my favorite characters is the T-1000. I would have loved to see the history of the T-1000. Like, how did Skynet came with that idea? Who was the antithesis? What was it? Antithesis?
The creator of it? Or
yeah.
How did they come up with the idea?
Yeah, like there had to be somebody who said, you know what, it'll be pretty interesting, pretty neat to have artificial intelligence like this, that he could change different forms, he could do this and that, and I would love to see something like that. It starts off like a different branch of Skynet, and they're trying to work with nanotechnology, and then you see, the main character is not really a soldier, it's a scientist, and it's actually Robert Patrick who's trying to make a way to create this artificial intelligence using Skynet's programming, and he's just trying to invent this, and then the war comes. He somehow survives because Skynet keeps him alive and keeps some of the scientists alive, so because they come up with pretty good ideas, because Skynet's not that smart. It's just a program, and it can only copy itself. It can't upgrade itself, so it needs humans. So that would have been pretty interesting. That
sounds like the Matrix in a sense. Like, it needs humans to help itself, survive.
Yeah,
almost.
Yeah, and that would have been pretty interesting, because in reality, if you look at the animal kingdom, there's certain animals, certain insects that need other insects or need other things to survive.
Or we're just going all over the place to get our point across.
So, yeah, and that's one of the things I think I would have been awesome for the Terminator series to go branch off into that. It's not so much of an action pack, but it's more like a psychological film where it's the T-1000 finally come into existence, but before it became into existence, like the scientist is trying to invent this to help the human race, but in reality, it ends up turning on them, and then you see like a CGI, like a young Robert Patrick appear, and you're like, oh, the T-1000 from Terminator Part 2, that's so cool, and he finally
you've seen this boy,
and he finally appears. And the older Robert Patrick is like, he's already old, and he's a scientist, and he's like, my creation, my son. Like, my creation, my son. And then that would be pretty, deep.